Bang the gavel, very good.
Good evening. Welcome to Charter Township of Grand Blanc Board Meeting for Tuesday, October 3rd. If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Robertson, could you call the roll, please?
I would be happy to, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Hugo?
Here.
Trustee Fike?
Here.
Trustee Raridan is absent. Trustee White?
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Here.
Of course, I'm here. Supervisor Bennett?
Present.
6 members present, a quorum.
All right, thank you. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Regular agenda? Okay, motion by
Motion by Fike,
Support.
support by Ms. Hugo.
support by Hugo for the agenda. Let's see. Trustee Hugo?
Yes. Trustee
White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. And now we will move to public comment. If there's anybody here that wishes to make public comment. Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the board. And we have a privileged presentation. And the Senior Services Director, Lynn Radzlikowski, is here this evening. So welcome, Lynn.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Radzilowski, and I'm the Senior Services Director for Genesee County. I've been in my position for almost 13 years, and my main goal is to oversee the senior millage and ensure that the services as well as your tax dollars are being spent appropriately. So I'm here to hopefully inform, to educate, and to answer any questions that you might have about the senior millage. So we have just started our fiscal year 2023-2024. That means we are in the 8th year of the second 10-year renewal. So this millage is set to expire in December 31st, 2025. Our goal, our office's goal, with the blessing, of course, of the Genesee County Board of Commissioners, is to have this millage placed on the August 2024 ballot for renewal. The reason we want to do this ahead of time is because we're dealing with human beings. There are seniors in our community that depend on this millage for their daily meals. It's not fair to them to just say, I'm sorry, tomorrow because the millage didn't renew, you don't have meals anymore. So we want to be prepared. The millage renewed at over a 72.3% approval last time, so I don't foresee this not renewing, but crazier things have happened, so we always want to plan. This year, we're actually projected to put out $8 million into the community for senior services. And senior services technically is a senior, a Genesee County resident age 60 or better. So first of all, we fund the 16 area senior centers. Each of those senior centers, it was recommended that they receive a 5% increase. So we have 2 levels. Your largest center is a level 3. That would include your Grand Blanc Senior Center. They went from $196,500 with a 5% increase to $206,330. We have 10 centers that are at the level 3 status. And basically what that means is they serve over 1,000 participants annually. Then we have our level 2 that went from $131,355 with a 5% to $137,926 for 6 centers. Those are your smaller centers, your Montrose, Township, Brennan Senior Center, Hasselbring Senior Center in the city of Flint. And that means a level 2 serves between 250 to 999 participants. We used to have a level 1 back in the day, and that was 1 to 249, but we don't have any level 2s.
And is that per month, or what is, or that's like the 1,000 or whatever?
The
That's per
1,000,
year, or-
it is, they have a goal to have 1,000 unduplicated seniors in that center by March 31st, 2024. So they have a good 6 months, which usually everybody makes it. And if we see, because we can track those numbers, if we see things that are lacking, we can say like, hey, might want to, bump up, have a special event or something like that. So we monitor those things. So along with funding the 16 senior centers, we have 23 contracts with other service providers within Genesee County. So we have 39 contracts for totaling almost a little over $8 million. So those service provider contracts are your home-delivered meals, your in-home personal care and chore services, in-home respite, the Disability Network's senior ramp program, which has been very successful, probate court services, guardianship conservatorship services, elder abuse and prevention, also your in-home respite, adult daycare, lawn care, snow maintenance, and those are just to name a few of the things that we do. So these are all services that are eligible to seniors. For our service providers, we had a few increases as compared to where the senior centers had a 5% across the board. We increased in-home personal care and chore service by $75,000 to reduce the wait list. Our two services that are the highest priority are home-delivered meals and in-home personal care. The goal of the senior millage is to keep a senior in their home as long as possible, as long as safety is not compromised. By doing these types of services, we can keep a senior in their home. Not every senior needs assisted living as soon as they turn 65 years old. All they might need is a couple hours of help to do chores, maybe do a little laundry, and have a home-delivered meal, and they can live safely in their home. We increased the guardianship and conservatorship program payment out because of the increase in payee fees. So that's additional dollars that's coming out that they have to pay because they don't have anybody to help them with this. And then we are having one new contract and one renewal. The first one for a renewal is with the Community Access Center for our deaf and hard of hearing to provide interpreter services for our Flint deaf senior group, to making them more inclusive out in the community. We also have a brand new contract with Effective. They are another sign language and interpreter service that we're offering strictly to the senior centers. We want all 16 senior centers to be inclusive and include our seniors that may not feel as comfortable going because they are deaf or hard of hearing. So we definitely know the cost of how much it is for an interpreter. So we didn't want to take that away from the senior center's budget. So this is a separate contract that the senior millage is paying for. So if Grand Blanc knows that there's an event coming up and they have interest with maybe a group of 1 to 10 seniors that are deaf of hard of hearing, Misty can go ahead and schedule that for the event, and then we get the bill. So you can promote it, you can put it out there that, hey, we have these services. The other great thing is we're going to have these interpreters available during the tax season. So they're going to be able to help these seniors. And again, we want to make all seniors welcomed at the center. So we're really excited about this, and we hope this takes off. But it's always exciting to do new programs like this, helping everybody. So year-end data will be coming in at the end of October. We will start working on the annual report and local unit of government report come November, December. So that's when you can expect it being released to have fiscal year 22-23 data available for you. So there's my little spiel, little senior millage in a nutshell. I would love to answer any questions you may have. I did put a packet on your desk. If there's any questions that, in the middle of the night, you just wake up and you're like, wow, I should have asked that, please email me or call me, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that come up. But I'm also more than happy to answer any right here.
Mr. Limita?
What I will say to the board is that we have a very successful senior center. Missy does a great job down there. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to be down there during the day when the activities are going on, I know we got a chance to tour it in our board workshop last year, and you saw that there's no doubt we had some deferred maintenance. We need to, take a look at it. But we may be at the point with the amount of programs, the amount of participants that we have, that the board's conversation as we start talking about overall for the next 10 years, working with the city on that jointly owned facility, do we need to expand it? Could we accommodate the land there to expand it? Because we really are, the popularity of the programming that is provided. We're getting close to capacity on a lot of those programs, and we don't want to have to turn people away. So there may be some decisions that this board's going to have to make in conjunction or combination with the City of Grand Blanc city commissioners on how we go to approach that in the future. But I thought this was really good. We met and met with Lynn, I don't know, a couple of months ago or so, and had a conversation about budgeting and where we're at, trying to get a better understanding, and asked Lynn to come and address the board. And then kind of, Lynn and I spoke about it just before, is to do it on a much more regular basis so that this board's more informed with not just what's going on in our own senior center, but what senior services are doing across Genesee County, because that's important for all of us. Yeah. And so Lynn's committed to being here whenever we need her. I told her I'm not going to make her come in every month and give us a report or anything, but maybe a couple times a year, and as often as you guys need it.
Yeah, I think, the meeting was very helpful. Dr. Brown was there as well, Misty, and I thought it was a very good meeting for just kind of where are we at with senior services here in Grand Lake Township and looking at the overall picture. And we appreciate the 5% increase also. One of the things too is our senior population's got to be growing. I mean, with the boomers, reaching retirement, what have you. Not that any of us are getting close to that, but.
I think there's a couple of us that would be allowed to go to the program.
But, with the numbers swelling, we're doing a great job if we're getting some of those people to realize that, hey, we've got a senior center. You might have, been working full-time your whole life, but now that you have some time, you might want to do some recreating in your own backyard, which is right at the senior center. So, yeah, you're right. I think, with our programming, it will have to expand, I think, over the next several years greatly. So, Clerk Robertson?
No, I don't have any. I'm fine.
Okay. Mr. Fike, did you?
I would just say thank you, Lynn, for all your assistance with the Disability Network, providing money, funds for ramps in Genesee County. It's greatly appreciated, and just the way your office operates, very professional. We appreciate that.
Thank you. It's a wonderful program.
Any questions, concerns? Okay, we appreciate you coming in and probably introducing yourself to a few of the board members here for the first time, but we appreciate the update and look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. Just one item in the consent agenda I want to make note of is item B with regard to the reappointment of Jeff Bennett to the Building Board of Appeals. I am not related to Jeff. Not any kind of relation, so just so that's clear. But I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda if somebody cares to make that. Okay? Mr. White makes that motion, supported by Mr. Fike.
Supported by Fike. Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Hugo?
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay. With that, moving on to old business, we have our strategic plan update for our DPW facility and fire station. We have some exciting stuff. Mr. Lehman?
Yes, so this evening, you guys can go ahead and approach and plug in and get your presentation ready. This evening, in order to cover that portion of our strategic plan, both Rick and Andy, you guys have met these gentlemen before, representatives from Plant Brand Cresso, our project managers for this project. They're going to share information with you, kind of an update on where we're at. I've been providing updates all along as we go. You guys knew that the financial aspects were one of the areas that, I don't want to say stumbling block, but that set us back a little bit. We wanted to take the time to review, and so that we were making sure that we were hitting the expectations, especially from, this is a big investment. There's no doubt that we need to move forward. We're busting at the seams here, and as you can tell by that we build walls and tear walls down and make two offices into, one office into two offices, and a lot of it's just out of necessity, but we literally are busting at the seams. And so as much as we didn't want to delay this project, we had to get it right. The most recent cost estimates, I think, came in within about 5% maybe of the engineer's estimates, early estimates. So we feel confident now that we're somewhere. You're going to see, they're going to walk you through a presentation. You're going to see some of the design elements of what that building looks like on the actual property and on the campus, with some looks at the elevation, so you get the front of it. I think you'll be happy with where we're at, but they really are going to update you on the progress. I said they had probably about 10 minutes, 5 minutes for Q&A. I know we got a lot on the agenda tonight, but with that, Rick?
We'll certainly make it quick. Andy,
Sure.
like to lead off here.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. Just one point of clarification. You'll notice in the top left-hand corner, it says Plant Moran Real Point. We have officially changed the name of our company effective last Monday. For reasons that I'll spare you this evening, same people, same services, just a new name. So you'll see our services referenced to that, to our new name moving forward. So without further ado, I'll let Rick kind of take you through the presentation.
Thank you and good evening. I'm excited to be here to give you guys our first update on the DPW and fire station facility. As Dennis had mentioned, over the past few months, we've been very busy behind the scenes, so we're excited to share with you where we're at currently. So for this presentation, we'll cover work that's been completed to date, so that's essentially the schematic design phase, or the first of three design phases. We'll provide an update on the budget, the schedule, share with you some snapshots from the schematic design deliverables, and then briefly talk about next steps. And if you have questions through any of this presentation, feel free to just stop me. But schematic design phase overview, this is the work that's been completed to date. DAG, which is Detroit Architectural Group, and BKV, they're the architects, engineers of record. They're doing all the program validation and design work. They commenced with the program validation and schematic design back in late October of 2022, and ultimately ended up submitting their schematic design package, or the first schematic design package, in March of 23. And with those documents, the construction manager, Frank Rewald and Sons, developed a opinion of probable cost, or cost estimate. And they go a little deeper than a lot of CMs do in developing this cost estimate. It wasn't just based on square footage and some numbers. They did some takeoff. So this was a very detailed cost estimate. Ultimately, it was based on a total square footage of just under 70,000 square feet. And the cost estimate for hard costs only came in just under 30 million. That was over our target budget. So Plant Moran Real Point facilitated, it was actually a series of value engineering workshops where we discussed opportunities to scale back on program, making sure we're weeding out any wants and focusing more on needs, talking about different building systems that might be more cost effective but still functional and serve this building typology. After those workshops, DAG and BKV continued to work together from discussing different options for building systems and costs and what would be appropriate. They ended up submitting the final schematic design package on September 7th of this year. Rewald updated the cost estimate. We did shave about 10,000 square feet off the space program, and we are now currently at 22 million or just over in hard costs, and that was within 5% of our target. So at the end of schematic design, that puts us in really good shape. So we're confident that we can move into the next design phase, maintaining that or even coming in under that target budget. I know that was a lot for the schematic design overview. Any questions just on that portion? Excellent. This is just a snapshot of kind of the budget that were developed throughout this process. So the very first left-hand column is what we presented to the board back in July of 2022. It was a total project budget of 20 million with 15 million of hard costs. As I mentioned earlier, that first cost estimate that Rewald provided was just under 30, so that carried our total project cost to 37. We regrouped, did some value engineering, and we are currently now at a total project cost of just over 28 million with hard costs at 22. Any questions on the budget? Excellent.
So was most of the hard cost savings just scaling back on the size of the?
Square footage was a big part of it, yep. And then we reduced the building volume as well. We did load-bearing masonry for the fire station instead of steel. Rewald brought a lot of good ideas to the table in terms of value engineering.
Okay.
In terms of the project schedule, again, we just wrapped up the schematic design. We'll be moving right into design development, just starting tomorrow. and on the way to this meeting today, was on the phone with DAG and BKV, and they have a new schedule that improves some of those dates. It's something they were focusing on and seeing how they can improve it. So now they're talking about delivering design development end of November. So this is already an old version of the schedule. But we're looking to submit the construction documents, say mid-May of 2024. We'll go through a brief bid award process and then start construction May of 2024 and carry that through August, end of August 2025. And it sounds like we're going to be able to shave a couple months off of that based on what the architect is saying. And then we'll have a couple months of closeout at the end there to carry us through the, October of 2025. One thing we will work with Rewald on is finding the appropriate time and adjust schedules so we make sure we hit the bid market at the right time and get good bids. And so these are just some of the snapshots that came from the schematic design deliverables. This is the site plan. You can see that we are kind of nestled between Dort Highway and the existing service drive there, as well as the pond. Can you see my cursor? Yep, excellent. So this is the fire station component, and I have some enlarged plans on the next slide, so this will make a lot more sense here in a minute. But this is the fire station component. This is the DPW fleet storage or garage area. We've got the DPW admin area nestled over here, and then there's some shared spaces in between. And that was another way we were able to shave off some square footage just by creating some shared spaces. Okay, so this plan is rotated, so north is really to the right here. But this is the fire station. We got 4 apparatus bays with some support spaces off to the side. We've got the day room, a series of bunk rooms, lockers. We got a workout room. And this is the fire station admin area with offices, conference room. This is the main lobby where you can access the fire department counter or the DPW counter, some toilet rooms, and then a shared conference space. Just to the plan, sorry about that, just to the plan east of that, we have the DPW admin area where we have our office functions, support spaces to the north for the garage area, and then we have a wash bay, and then the dark green area is just cold storage, so there'll be a roof above, but no walls. It's just a further enlarged plan of the fire department area. Enlarged plan of the DPW admin. Again, we got the offices and the open office workstations along the south wall or exterior where we can let in a lot of natural daylight. We have a briefing room, some lockers, everything that came out of our space programming discussions with the team. This is the fleet storage. We've got a wash bay here, and we've got, as I mentioned before, the cold storage area. And then this just conveys some of the exterior concepts. This conveys the massing and some of the material selections. This will continue to develop through design development, but I think this is pretty close to where we're going to land. The DPW building is primarily a pre-engineered metal building, so metal siding is very cost effective. Carry some of the brickwork along the front to tie in the fire station feel to make this, kind of feel like one contiguous building. We've got the fire station on the side with the red doors. This is a canopy. We wanted to create some element to the public so they know where the main entrance is. So this will draw them right to the center of the building. And then just some of the elevations. So it's very linear, very low. Some of this, again, might change a little bit through design development, but I think for the most part, this is where the elevations are going to land. Very cost-effective in material selection. This will either be brick, primarily brick and metal siding. And that's just the backside. And then in terms of next steps, we're moving right into the design development phase, so we'll continue to add layers of detail. And at the end of this phase, we will do another cost estimate at Rewald. We'll do another cost estimate to make sure that we are still on target in terms of budget or below. And we'll do that one more time at the end of construction document phase. And that's my 10-minute spiel.
Great, man.
Yeah.
Any questions? I know there's a lot of info.
Joel?
You said you're ready to go in May to start.
Construction?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Dennis?
So, and just for the board, we met last week, treasurer's office, clerk's office, admin, interim director of DPW, Greg Boggs was in. We had a conversation around the financing of this, the bonding elements. We met with bond counsel that we've used prior for a number of years, as well as Benzinski and Company, and talked a little bit about what we need to do to be prepared to move the construction forward. So there's a timeline that we have to follow. Attorney Laddie was in the meeting as well aware of what we need to do. We've got a notice of intent we have to publish that we intend to get done in 2023 yet, because we're going to be taking on some debt, obviously, with this building. So we'll start to work on getting those financing elements done on the amount that we have available from the campus fund to put towards this. Plus, we've dedicated that $1.5 million in ARPA funds, so maybe $2.5 million going against the construction costs of the fire department. We also will take a look at what makes the most sense for us from what we need to take out of our enterprise funds for the DPW water sewer portion of it, and then what that's going to leave for us basically to bond to move forward. So a lot of moving parts as we go through this. They're going to go into those development design elements, and we're going to be working on the financing, so we all come together in 2024 when they start getting ready to break ground and push dirt around. So really exciting. I hope you guys like the look and kind of what we've done. Again, cut out 10,000 square foot from the initial design. I just want to assure you that with cutting that 10,000 square foot out, we had DPW, we had fire department involved in that entire process. We're not cutting out anything that would prevent us from this still being a viable building for the next 35 or 40 years to accommodate our development. We went into the ideas of cutting some of the things out. I mean, there were some nice to haves, like to get more indoor light in there, to have, like a courtyard, so that, especially from the full-time fire guys having to be in there all the time and being out of that courtyard, but it added considerably to the building and the footprint. And so some of the cuts that we made, while, again, they were nice to have, they wasn't a need to have. And we've got the space needs down to where it truly is functional. It does everything we need, accommodates future growth. But at the same time, when you look at this, fire station number 1, don't forget, you've invested $1.5 million into fire station number 2 in that remodel to have that ready. And we're going to, even with our not changing our model from full-time supplemented by part-time paid on call, that we do have the room to expand. We put in the sleeping quarters at station number 2, and being able to run, both fire stations is a big deal. So I think this is more than adequate to meet our needs, from now and far into the future for the next 40, maybe 50 years.
Well, who would have predicted that construction costs would have, increased so dramatically over the past 3 years? And unfortunately, we don't have an unlimited budget, and, we want to build things for the future. And I think this, building looks nice. We've gone over it a million times with everybody to make sure that it's going to accommodate all of our needs now and in the future. So I think it's a very responsible thing to do. We'd all love to have a building as nice as our police department.
Is that a dig?
That was built in a different time, but, I think it's a very responsible expenditure. And as you mentioned, with bond council, the board is going to have to approve some things to, yet this year, actually, to move forward on being able to have the bonds next year. So I think you guys have done a great job of trying to get the price down without sacrificing what we're going to be able to provide for service and accommodating our employees either. So great job to all of you. Yes, Treasurer Kilmer?
What happens, and I realize that, you're talking over a period of time, but what happens with our existing buildings, with the DPW and that we have right now? Is this going to be torn down, or is this?
Right. Well, this existing building, I mean, we're kind of bursting at the seams right now. We have, you can't see it right here in this room, but behind us, there's been a lot of renovation going on in the past month. We've had a day where employees just rolled up their sleeves and helped move furniture, and we moved a lot of things around. The state's new election laws are requiring us to do quite a bit of extra things that we didn't do before. So we are making sure ballots will be secure. It's really a great improvement, actually, for the clerk's department. We're going to have a separate area for that whole activity, so people won't have any question where they're going, what's going on. But really, we're bursting kind of at the seams here in this building. So by moving some of the functions to the new building, the DPW, some of the garage space could be used for parks and recreation. I mean, we have a lot of things that need to be stored from time to time, especially with all the events that we're having. Mr. Lima, do you want to comment on any of what we're going to do with some of these buildings that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is our mechanics have outgrown that space, and we've known that for many years. In fact, we probably need another mechanic. Saves us more money by having somebody doing it in-house. One of the plans is obviously the existing DPW, one of the existing DPW barns is going to turn into the mechanics barn. We've already been in the process of looking at what the lifts are going to cost us and things like that. Some of the things come in very handy. The tool crib is still the tool crib. We can move the mechanic stuff into there. So that's going to be an exciting change, be able to give these guys a space. One of the things they can't do in the current building is lift and repair some of the big trucks. They've started to do some of the repairs on some of the fire apparatus, even saves us a ton of money by having our own mechanics be able to do it. But then you look at our Vactors and our bigger trucks that these guys are working on them. They're certified, but we also have to have the room and have the equipment, the lifts that can lift these kind of vehicles up. Otherwise, they're doing repairs out in the parking lot. So that's going to be a huge change for them, converting one of the existing DPW buildings into the new mechanics garage. Then as far as this building goes, we literally are busting at the seams. DPW is obviously going to be moving down to the new DPW facility. That'll open up a little bit more square footage here, which is great. With the fire going, that's going to offer us up some other opportunities for that whole front end of the building, what that looks like. And one of the things we need is additional storage space, cold storage. We can do that with the current fire bays in the front. We can put vehicles in there. But one of the things that we talked about is for strategic planning purposes is to have this board begin to look at what's the long-range plan for our campus. We purchased that other property on Dort Highway. What's our overall campus plan look like? That would include this building. Earlier today, we heard a report about our senior center and how we're reaching capacity in a lot of the programs we do. Is it possible that 10 years from now, we're building a new administration building that was always intended next to the police department, and this building becomes a new community center or senior center or both? That's something that this board needs to put onto your strategic plan and create the vision around that for where we're going. The police department building will be done paying those bonds in 2031. Seems like a long ways off, but it will come sooner than you think, and that'll give us the opportunity to make those decisions about, one of the challenges we've had here is that this is an armory building designed to be an armory building that we've made into an administrative municipal complex. And so tearing walls down and putting walls back up and, shifting things around, it's still an armory building that, we turned into a municipal complex. It'll be nice that at some point in the future, some board is going to move forward on creating that administrative building. It'd be nice if you guys, as cohesive and as visionary you've been as a board, were able to put that roadmap together. So whether it's you guys or some iteration of a future board is moving that forward, potentially as early as 2031 when the police bonds are paid off.
And we've seen, with the fire and the DPW building that, even when you say we're going to do something, there's a process that, even when you know where it's going to be and what you think want it to look like, it's going to take several years to even get to the point where you're ready to break ground. So I think it's wise that we put together a plan for what our intention, if we're in these seats in 31 or whenever that bond expires, what could potentially start, but put together the plan, and then future boards can amend it, what have you, but at least we've got some vision of as some pieces fit together. It's just like when the Playland property became available, it's like, you know what, that's a contiguous piece of our parcel here. And if we have a plan, when those things happen, when there's opportunities, we can, justify moving forward. But, yes, Mr. Pike?
So the cost of this is $28 million. Does that include the landscaping for the whole
Yes, yep.
park?
Well, just
Next door?
for the site associated with the DPW. So what you can kind of see here in the site plan, and again, this is conceptual, but there's some required landscape between the building and Dort Highway, but there's also some landscape within the areas around the building as well. So there is some landscape accounted for in that.
But those trees that are off to the north, are those all coming down?
If it's in this area of the building footprint, then yes.
Most of those
there's-
trees are located in that delineated wetlands on the north
Yeah,
side.
the wetlands will be staying away from.
And the projected completion date again is?
For construction is August 26, 2025, but we're trying to improve that. That's our current target.
So yeah, there's a couple of parcels all over. So there's a wetland just to the north of it that if you walk over there, it gets pretty thick with wooded area, and actually it slopes down quite a ways. So that area actually isn't even on that plan because it's further north. We also just acquired the property that's adjacent to the car repair facility, as you know, the place that had all the tree trimmings laying on it, what have you. We've cleaned that up, and since in the past month, buildings were tore down and grass was planted. Looks very nice, by the way, Mr. Leamington. Really cleans up that whole area on Dort. So I think it'll be landscaped well.
There is a plan, or there is discussion to make this one big, walking trail, or, there's a lake there, or a pond. I mean, can I go fish? Or would you?
Well, I think, we would love to have that, and that's the plan overall. And I think when we put together a campus plan, we want to determine what would eventually happen with this building, so that if we are looking at pathways and that sort of thing, where would we want that to be? We don't want to build something and then 5 years later, we're ripping it up, because something else is going to be over here. So, but I think it's a great point. We definitely want to do that. There's been a lot of ideas. What about a pavilion for events, or, small farmers market type things? And all that needs to go into the discussion as far as what could go into this campus. And really on the north part of the township here, there aren't any parks. And so it's an underserved area for recreation. So if we could incorporate that into this campus, it would be great. So I think all those suggestions, would be great for our board to have a workshop and talk that through. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for your
pleasure.
work, and we're looking forward to moving forward even further now.
We will be back at the end of the next design phase as well for an update.
Okay, very good.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, item B, the board will discuss the creation of the Point North Corridor Development Authority. And I know we've had a little bit of discussion on this, and Mr. Limata?
So, as we told you about 4 weeks ago, I believe that David wanted a little bit more time to do some research on that to make sure that what we were finding out was true, and that we really have to go through. It's not as easy as just delineating the boundaries and saying, great, this is our corridor improvement authority. We actually have to go through all of the same steps, and unfortunately, As much as we didn't want to do that, I think that's the only way legally that we can move forward, and I'll let David speak to that.
No, you're exactly right. One of the things that we looked at was trying to not jump through all the hoops and have the public hearing notices and specific notices to taxing authorities if we weren't necessarily going to have a TIF district. And we have decided at this time to not have a TIF district, but the statute, still requires all of the same processes that you would have if you were going to create a TIF district. The other thing that we want to do, as long as we have to go through that long process, and so what we'll have is a public hearing, we'll have to wait a certain number of days, we'll have to send notice to the taxing jurisdictions to get their input. We'll have to adopt another resolution creating the authority, then we're going to have to create an authority board. It'll be between 5 and 9 people, and we have, I think, 9 on our DDA. I think we might want to have somewhere between less than 9 on our new corridor authority. But nonetheless, we want to prepare ourselves for the possibility that we want to have a TIF district in the future. And so one of the things we want to make sure is that we have the district boundaries exactly correct. And we want to make sure that we've got a pretty good understanding of the inventory of the properties in the district. And so we now know we have to go the long route. You have a proposed resolution in front of you that would set a public hearing for November 14th. But I want to actually go back to Mr. Lehman and see what his thoughts are as far as the confidence in the inventory that we have, the confidence in the district boundaries, because we really want to get that right, because it's gonna set us in motion moving forward. And we're not going to be able to easily come back and change this district. So I'll defer to you on the map.
So what I would say to the board, it seems like we've been working on this a long time, but yet at the same time, when you start to look at those boundaries, when we had to put the DDA boundaries together, basically it was me walking into Matt's office and saying, let's go, I got to get this done because I got to move to hit that deadline to capture Magna. Because we're not doing a TIF capture here, we're just trying to get it set right for the future if we were to move forward with a TIF capture at some point. I would just encourage you to make sure that we take the time and that you're comfortable with where those boundaries are, because if we want to adjust those boundaries, you go through this entire process again to make any adjustments to the boundaries. So maybe like really taking a look at the actual parcels, the valuation of the parcels, all of those things, so that we're 100% comfortable in valuation, that, you know, that in a township or any taxing entity, 20% of the properties get boots on the ground taken a look at by your assessing department every year, so that every 5 years, everything's looked at. I want to make sure with assessing that all of this has been done, or are we going to be, you know, looking at it next year? If we are, then let's get that done before we decide on which parcels you're going to include. That's the only note of caution I have. If you're prepared to move forward, we can move forward. If you're good with the boundaries that we put together so far, we can move forward with those. All I'd say is that, you know, the caution that I give you is that it's tough to change once you've moved it forward.
I would feel comfortable with having our assessing look over those properties. We're setting a baseline, you know, with this, so I think it's important that we get that correct. And so I would feel more comfortable. I know, you know, it seems like it's taking forever to move this, but I'd feel more comfortable having them take a look at that and seeing if there's anything we need to do on those. There's been a little bit of change in some of the properties over the years, and I don't know, that's where I'm at. But the other thing is, I think we've also had some discussion, or at least you and Ms. Roberts maybe, with regard to MEDC, right? And there might be some things we can explore in the meantime with them, from what I understand.
Yeah, there may be some other opportunities for us, whether we want to look at redevelopment ready community or one of those other programs through the state that gives us the potential to maybe be eligible for some funding that would not involve a TIF district. Again, we were hoping that we could develop this district without creating that, having to go through all the hoops. We have to, you know, publicly notice, or we have to let every taxing entity in the county know that we're going to do this. And it's kind of strange, because why are you creating authority if you don't intend to have a TIF, and they can still opt out of it, and, you still got to go through all of those. So a lot of work without the idea of getting to the point where we're going to do a capture, and we're going to pay some outside consultants to assist with that, so we're going to expend some money to move it forward. That's what I would say. I do think that after our meeting with the MEDC, that there might be some opportunities for us in another direction that would help us with some of the funding that we're trying to do. Our whole point of establishing this is so that we could create that revolving loan fund to assist with some of those facade improvements and things like that. But that's where we're uncovering is maybe there's another way that we can accomplish what we want to accomplish before we do this.
You're meeting with the MEDC in the next few weeks or the next month or so? Okay. I mean, it's amazing what the MEDC can do. I mean, you look at the garden building that the city has, it's not their building, but it's going to be built in the city, but, $5 million towards the $15 million project. That's pretty impressive. We have Plastic Omnium that's building a $175 million facility, and they're getting $5 million. So on a scale of things, it's pretty good. So if we could attract something similar to that, to this area, or even something half of that, or a quarter would be phenomenal, for the businesses in this north part of Saginaw Street. So I would want to explore that as well.
So you're saying maybe wait?
I think we have the meeting with MEDC and also get with our assessing department and make sure the properties, where we're at on that. I don't want to say any of them are overvalued, but we want to look at it so that we're setting a baseline at a point where we don't look at it a year from now and say, gosh, I should have checked this out a little bit more. But, when we formed the DDA even, we've had people say, gosh, I wish you would have drawn the line over here. And, some of them we probably would have, and others it's like, nah, we can't jump around. It has to be contiguous and what have you. But we learned, we had a timeline we were working with there that we had to get this thing done, and not that we would have done anything differently, but I think it's important that we just make sure we make a conscious decision what we're doing here.
You don't have the pressure of the timeline
Right.
with this one. So again, you can move it forward anytime. You can move it forward today and get the date. I mean, it's
Right.
It's totally where your comfort level is.
Board's okay. I'd prefer to hold off a couple of months anyways to see where we're at, see what MEDC says, and also have our assessing department take a look at the properties.
How long are we looking at assessing, making a decision on this?
After the new year. Right now, we're in new construction season. That occupies our time. We can start some of them, but I don't think we could get through all of them.
So begin in the new year or be done by the new
We
year?
could start looking at that at the beginning.
Start in and what are we looking at time-wise? Because that's 3 months.
Depends on how many parcels are in that district and the size of the parcels. We do have 3 field appraisers, so it just depends on the number of parcels, the size of the parcels. I know there's a lot more smaller commercial properties over here, so it shouldn't take them quite as long as if it was larger industrial properties.
So next spring?
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, yes. I mean, we've just been doing this for a couple of years and now we're kicking the can to next spring. It's October. I mean, we're gonna run out the clock on this board doing anything if we actually don't take some action.
Well, part of it benefits the district to get it right, because if we have the values, in a place where they shouldn't be, it works against us. I mean, we could drop the hammer tonight and get moving on it, but it benefits the area if we make sure the values are in line. Clerk Robertson?
Yeah, well, 2 things. First of all, I like it's been a little while since we've had a discussion about the boundaries and how they were set and the rationale behind it. So I'd like us to just, as a refresher, revisit that issue so we understand how the area was chosen and why. Through you, Mr. Supervisor, to Trustee White, this has been a priority of yours since the beginning of the term. I would hope, and I know that I'm pleased with the progress that we've had thus far. We've gone from basically from scratch to regular communication with the businesses that are in that corridor. They are seeing progress in what we're doing. These things do take time. I acknowledge that. We certainly don't want paralysis by analysis, but we are endeavoring on a significant creation of a corridor authority here, and a little bit more deliberation, as long as we're committed to taking action before the term is out, and certainly in the new year. We've got the balance of 2024 to get it underway and make good progress before this term is over.
Mr. Limita, one idea, would it be possible, instead of checking every single property, is to do a sample of the properties and just take a look at a number of them to see if we think, if there's some that are questionable, that we just take a look at those particular properties, just kind of as a sample, and see where we're at, or?
And anything's possible. I don't know, I can't tell you when the date was that they were last reviewed, quite frankly.
Right.
It could be, depends on how they did it, they don't just, this wasn't, it never existed as a corridor authority, so they certainly weren't all in the same grouping. Some could be 5 years old, some maybe were done 2 years ago. I mean, I don't have a frame of reference, so if there's any properties of concern. And again, that's only if we move forward with a TIF. Right now, the board doesn't intend to do a TIF. We're just creating an authority so that you can move this thing forward. It's just that will be your baseline forever. And this is
When we form the TIF, or when we form the?
When you form this, that's your baseline. You just created the baseline. So that's my only word of caution. It doesn't have any other impact as far as what you want to accomplish. If the whole goal is to accomplish that we want to create this revolving loan fund, and we're never going to have a TIF,
then we don't have to worry about it.
Then who cares what the baseline is? We're just creating an authority. But if you ever decide to do it, you're going to go through this entire process again, because you have to put, like I say, I'll bring in a consultant to help us with it, but you go through and you have to show what the potential value is, what the baseline is, what the potential would be if you created a TIF. I mean, if you remember the DDA booklet, and it breaks it down, and then you have to break it down by taxing entity. What would the veterans, if we created a TIF, what's the baseline, and what would be, you're going to create it for the next 30 years. If we were to collect, what would that look like? How would that impact their finances? And then you have to share that with them, and then they have the opportunity to put it at their board level, and they weigh in on it. I mean, again, that's what we were trying to say. Hopefully, we can just create the authority without going through all the steps. Like I said, unfortunately, David found out we can't do that. It just depends on what your ultimate goal is. We talked about that a little bit at the strategic planning session. What's the ultimate goal for the board? Why do we want to do this? Why do we want to create the authority? And if it's because we really want to, show that investment or whatever without the TIF, and again, I just don't think the TIF will be, profitable, and that there's just not any big opportunities for you to see huge value come in. I think it would be an underfunded or a negative funded TIF for a number of years. But if it's just about creating a revolving loan fund, are there alternatives to being able to do that? Like I said, the redevelopment ready community thing, you got to jump through some hoops to get through that. It's a process. It'll probably take 1.5 years to go through the RRC to get that approved. Is there a way for us to move forward faster on something else? Are we able to find, rather than us being the impetus for what you're going to apply to us as your financing arm to help you with it, maybe we can work with the MEDC to show you where the small business grants are for facade improvements, because some of those exist. So we could be the conduit for the information to the business owners group by saying, hey, let us help you. Let us put you in touch with these people who have grants available who can help you with this. It still means we're moving it forward and we're accomplishing our goal. So that's another possibility, and that's what we ended up talking about with the MEDC when we met with them.
Tell you what if we have a 3-person committee of our board and a couple of our staff, whether it's Danielle, yourself, what have you, and we sit down and talk this through a little bit off. Mr. White, I'd like you to be on that as well, if you would. But just talk through some of this, and we can come back within the next 2 meetings. I know the next week is kind of crazy to try and do it before the next meeting, but maybe before the next 2 meetings, and come back with a recommendation to the board on what we want to do.
You can have the resolution, it's already there and it's ready to go. You can table it for a meeting, or you can table it for 2 meetings and decide, you know what, we're just going to move it forward and let's get this process going. Again, anytime, it doesn't matter. And so I said, if we were creating the TIF, I would be adamant that don't move forward right now, because you're just going to burn yourself. You're going to end up kicking yourself down the road saying, man, if we would have got this straight before we move forward, it'd be so much more financially feasible.
All right, well, if we got a consensus with the board that we have a small committee get together and go over it with some of our staff and get a little bit clearer direction on where we want to go with this. If we see it as being a TIF, or we're just going to use it for revolving loan fund or what have you. But if everybody's okay with that? Yeah. Are you okay with looking at it a little bit closer? Mm-hmm. And we can say that we're going to bring it back, and maybe not the next meeting, but within the next 2 meetings, and have a decision made which way we're going on that. So, okay, we'll go that route then. Okay, next item under new business. A, the board will consider a motion to approve a 1-year grant writing services contract with Linda Davis Kirksey for the amount of $36,000 and authorize Township Superintendent to execute all related contracts. Ms. Roberts? Good evening.
Assistant Superintendent Matt Kimmer and I met with Ms. Davis Kirksey regarding grant writing services. Currently, there are so many opportunities for grants available right now because of COVID and for other reasons. So now is the time really to act on these grants. Some things that we're looking at is funding for a sidewalk here in the Point North Business District. We are looking at funding for our new fire station, our new fire truck, police funding, and of course, funding for the park. We have so much deferred maintenance at the park. So Ms. Kirksey Davis Kirksey, sorry. Matt keeps calling you LDK, so I'm just going to call you LDK. That's easier. Is here if you have any questions for her.
Okay. Sure, come on up.
Me or her?
I have a question for her.
Yes, absolutely. Good evening.
Good evening. You
Nice
do
to meet
this.
you all.
Nice to meet you. You do this in other jurisdictions.
I sure do. I've been doing it 22 years.
So go through, for an example, what you do for other jurisdictions.
Other jurisdictions. I've worked with downtown development authorities where I've been their primary. Some of the grants you were speaking of, I've done redevelopment community grants through MEDC, small business grants. I am known for police and fire grants is what I'm known for. I teach my own grant course to staff and command. In fact, one of your firefighters was my student. In fact, when were you, Mr. Miracle? When were you, this last year? This last year. I developed my own grant writing course. I have been working with municipalities and nonprofit organizations, but primarily municipalities for over 22 years. I do funding projects. I've done funding projects for water and sewer in the UP. I've done that kind of thing, to a baseball field on a brown field in Utica. I have done any type of thing, interesting grants. I'm specialized in federal and state, and also local foundation grants, building partnerships in local communities with nonprofit organizations. I was really impressed what I was hearing with your services on aging. The Disability Network has been a very, very good source for grant opportunities for parks. I'm known for that too, to do all abilities and special needs parks for recreational opportunities. So I do a lot of different things. I just track funding. I'm known in this industry, my nickname, and I've said this to Melissa and Matt, I am known as a PETA. And there's a reason they call me that, because I'm very diligent, and I'm sure you can figure out what PETA means with organizations. I am very dedicated to the communities I serve. So I don't waste our time if you're all directing me to say, these are the priority projects that we need funding for this year. That's what we're going to find. We don't go after funds that are not something you're eligible for. We look strategic, we make sure that things are done correctly, and that's the kind of projects I work on. I mean, I've done everything, and I have different counties. I've done transportation projects for ferry boats. That was an interesting project, you know, for an island, and sought that. I'm very good at appropriations. I like the good old earmarks are back. I'm sorry, maybe people don't like them. We do, for jurisdictions such as you. So, in fact, we work together, kind of, sort of, on some of our parks projects. That's how I met Melissa. Melissa reached out to me and reviewed a beautiful write-up she did on a park project that you guys have, that we have funding there. But I work with the congressional offices. I know how to advocate. I don't say lobby, I advocate for the communities I serve. So I'm very good. This job has become a vocation for me over the last 22 years, because I love seeing projects come to fruition. And that's why I'm very, very dedicated to what I do. It's just me, you know? So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your questions.
I think so, but let me ask a follow-up.
Okay.
So how would this work? You know, Melissa and Dennis and us, or just them would have, all right, here are our priorities going into the
Right.
next year.
Right.
Go sick them, go get it, go find it.
What I would do.
Help us out here.
Well, we've had a preliminary meeting, and I kind of understand where the direction you're going. I really am happy I got to see the presentation on your fire station, because I have some ideas for funding that you could seek for some of the components of that project, as well as you get into the design phase. But how this works is I work under their direction. So if they are reaching out to me, we know every April Fool's Day, the state of Michigan through the DNR has grant opportunities that are open. So Melissa and I and Matt or Dennis will be talking to say, okay, do we have park projects that we want to get funded? What do we need to do? So we know that we're going to be preparing that. So basically, I work at their direction and under the guise of you as well. You set the priorities of the strategic plan of what you want to have funded and where those gaps are in funding, where you need help. So that's how I pursue it.
So Mr. Limata and Ms. Roberts would be the contact people, but I've got a question for you too, Ms. Davis, is, so, you know, we're known, I mean, as being an affluent community in the area, but in reality, we're probably one of the most diverse, you know, communities in this region, economically, culturally, racially, what have you. But what is the key to a community getting grant dollars? You know, I mean, we have so many different projects going, but what do you find the key is to a community getting grant dollars versus other communities? I mean, what do we have going for us that's going to help us or hurt us that you see?
Some communities, they have economic issues, which puts them to the top. They score higher depending on the project, okay? Economics. You have good economics. That's a good problem to have. But it's the amenities of what you're trying to provide for your community as far as that goes. If you've got, you know, hike and bike trails, or if you have your fire, you know, projects, if you're putting elements of solar or geothermal. I just had a project in Wayne County I did on fire station for geothermal. Feds were very interested in. But it depends on the project. You try to write the best of the portrait of what your community does best. And not necessarily have to be economics. It's what you're trying to do in the community building that you do with your transparency, diversity. All of those things are important when you're writing grants. And a lot of the federal grants now have certain inclusions that they want to have. And they'll say, do you have a diversity policy? Do you have this? Do you have that? And of course, we're going to answer all the things yes. But it really is on the project and how we depict it, and also your relationship of the project. I teach grant writing, and he'll remember me telling this to them as students. It's the commitment. I always tell folks, there is no free money. There is always a commitment that you have as a community to budget for that money. So a lot of it is planning. As you're going through your budget process, I'll be saying to these guys, okay, these are projects we want to go for funding, but we should set aside at least 25% of the overall project is our skin in the game. And we have to plan those things, and that's what a lot of the funders look at, is what is your commitment, your fiscal commitment to that project. If that answers some of your questions.
Okay. All right. Any questions, Ms. Davis?
I'm excited to work with
Is
you.
a motion in order, Mr. Supervisor?
It is.
Then I will make a motion to approve a one-year contract, grant writing services contract for Linda Davis Kirksey for the amount of $36,000. It's item 8A.
Support by Mr. Fike.
Motion by Robertson, supported by Fike. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
I appreciate this, and I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, the board will have the opportunity for a fiscal year 2024 general fund and special revenue funds budget overview presentation from the superintendent and department directors, followed by Q&A.
Just bring up the presentation. Can. That'd be great, too.
Oh,
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
So I think you saw your first presentation on a budget December of 2020. Barely seeded, still pretty green. We walked you through it, brought the department heads in and walked through it. We've done kind of that same or similar presentation for 2022, 2023. So here we are, we're looking at fiscal year 2024. What we thought was, rather than have each department get up and walk you all the way through each one of theirs, you've had the opportunity for the last month, you've had copies of the budget, and we were going to shorten this down a little bit rather than have each one of the department heads get up and walk you through their budget, number of personnel, all of those things. It really hasn't changed that much. The presentation hasn't changed that much. So we've compressed it a little bit this year. And we also have all the departments here to answer any questions that you may have. Thinking that we'll just kind of walk you through some of the key points, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and talk about next steps and what the board wishes to do as far as moving the budget forward. With that, I'm not going to read through all of this, but you guys get it. Formal budgeting is required for a governmental entity. If you were you're used to being in the private sector, you might have had a budget, but it wasn't required. We're required to have it. You guys do have to adopt that budget no later than the end of the year for our fiscal year start. And our whole goal, our financial objective moving this forward, is to maximize service delivery to the taxpayers. Townships have 3 mandated functions that you must do as a local unit of government: tax collection, property assessment, and election administration. Everything else that you do is a discretionary function. Now, we say that, but I think most people would argue that police and fire are not really discretionary, but you're not mandated to provide those services. You're only, outside of those 3. And how you choose to provide those, again, you can contract with somebody else to provide the services. If you didn't do police protection, for example, you'd have the sheriff's department is required to provide policing services for you. But you guys have to be responsive to what the taxpayers are telling you, what they expect from your services. So when you see all these other things on there, those are the things that have long been established as cost centers for Grambling Township. Our goals moving into 2024, obviously maintain or increase levels of service. You look at your mission statement on the wall, we talk about delivering premier services to Grambling Township through excellent customer service and continuous improvement. while encouraging growth. That's one of our driving motivations. We've, you look at your strategic plan initiatives. Are we funding those? Those are the questions we ask ourselves as we're putting your budget together. Expanding economic development opportunities. Look at the success we've had with some of that over the last few years. We've been growing at $100 million, per year, actually a little over $200 million last year. But you look at the amount of opportunities that have been created, and then obviously budget for capital projects. You have to be prepared to meet your both short and long-term needs, and so we continue to focus on the capital projects fund to make sure we can buy police cars and fire apparatus, and we got new buildings coming up, along with all of the other things that keep us moving. The great news for the budget outlook for 2024, if you take a look at the SEV, up 13.2% over the prior year. We hit $2.1 billion. That's amazing. Taxable value up nearly 8% over the prior year. This is $1.6 billion. That is, once again, we are the economic driver for Genesee County. The growth that we've experienced, positive growth, really fuels so many of the other taxing entities for Genesee County, whether it be senior services that you saw earlier, but parks and recreation, veterans, arts and culture. Grambling Township is a huge contributor, and a lot of it has to do with what we put up on the board every year for that taxable value. This is so good to see, 11th straight year of taxable value growth. We brag about that because, don't forget, we took such a hit during the recession. 2007, you saw us drop off. 2008, 9, 10, it took us 14 years of growth after the recession to get back to where we were. So we're like, man, this is so awesome, 11 straight years of taxable value growth. But we really hit it a year ago to get back to where we were in 2007 prior to the big recession. And challenges, obviously, the same for us as everybody. Headley rollbacks, Proposal A, limits growth. Personal property tax, they brought that exemption up to $180,000. If you have less than $180,000 of personal property tax, you just file the form one time and you no longer have to pay tax on that. All of those things limited funds that came into local government. And then just inflation, you feel it in your own budget at home. We certainly feel the same thing here. There's been some wage pressure in union negotiations, and as well as it's hard to compete in that. And then services, whether that be healthcare or everything else that we have to pay. Like I said, you feel it yourself. The state and legal requirements for a budget, I won't go and read all these, but again, the whole point behind it is that it is a financial plan. What you're saying when you adopt this budget is that this is our intention of how we're going to spend money. We can't spend any money until you've adopted that Appropriations Act that says, yes, this is how we intend to spend the money, and now we can move forward and spend the money. If you didn't adopt your budget, we don't have an authorization to spend. But a budget is not an authorization to spend. It's really a financial plan that says, this is our intention. It's why you guys approve things in advance as we move through the year. It's why we can do budget amendments if there's changes, if something happens, internal, external factors change, and we have to adjust or amend the budget. All of those things can happen. But just know that it's a legal requirement. It's not what's nice to have. That General Appropriations Act is our authorization to move forward and continue to operate the government. Our process starts really in June, where we start having conversations, but in July, Finance Director Kathy Sostak puts together the budget worksheets, looks back over the course of 3 years and the current year. Here's where we're at. Here's what your operating budget's been. Here's your year-to-date and your challenges that you might be facing. Then prepares revenue projections. That's why our assessing department is important. They got to get it right, because Kathy's going to take that information and create the revenue projections based upon March Board of Review numbers that come through. We start meeting with the budget review process with every single cost center department director. We finalize it, we look at it, we've got to balance the budget, it's required by law. we look at it and we have to trim. Not everybody gets everything they've asked for in their budget. We make cuts where we think is appropriate. That's what goes into the superintendent's recommended budget that was delivered to you electronically by September 1st, hard copy that few days later. And then you guys have until then, until December 31st to review, make changes, amend. We can do whatever you want to do at this point. Did we budget accordingly? Can we get your strategic agenda accomplished with what we did? Are we allocating funds to the areas that you want to see funds allocated to? That's the question for you. And we still have plenty of time to get through this thing. We can have as many meetings, or you can meet one-on-one. You can call department directors and directly set up a meeting, email them back and forth, go through me, go through them, or they're all here tonight to answer questions. And go ahead, Melissa. The fund types, this is shown up there, a lot of words, but again, just a reminder, we've got governmental funds and proprietary funds. Governmental funds are your general fund, your special revenue funds, debt service funds, and your capital projects like we mentioned. Your proprietary funds are basically public works. Your water and sewer funds are business type activities. Those funds are designed to operate on their own. In fact, one of the things when you're trying to qualify for low-cost grants or funding is you have to be able to show that you have created an appropriate budget within your enterprise funds, that you can maintain your system and you can continue to put capital away for the growth, the maintenance. You have to be able to show that you can operate the system. You will see the DPW budget under a separate cover. This is a quick breakdown on revenues and expenditures for your balanced budget. One of the things that it looks like we have a considerable amount more money allocated this year, $25 million. When you look at this number and think, wow, we've really gotten a ton more revenue, just know that one of the biggest factor in here is you have an incredible amount of special assessment districts that are being created. We're looking at $3.6 million in paving local street projects. So obviously, those numbers include the bond revenue funds. So we've got at least $4 million in this budget. So a big chunk of that is at $4 million. And yes, we had a successful year. Yes, our revenue did come up a bit, not that much. We didn't find another $5 million. It's really and again, I'm guessing how much money we're going to need as we move forward, depending on which projects move forward. We know that this year we'll do a budget amendment. We're going to have to talk about what we're doing for Kings Point, which that project is going to start. We just got the bill today for 50% of that project. We've got Concord Green that should be completed or nearing completion. We weren't sure if those were going to get pulled off in 2023. Looks like Kings Point will be partially done in 2023, finished in 2024. Part of our bond discussion is when's the appropriate time to bond those. According to bond counsel, what makes most sense is for us to wait into 2024 if we can, and then bond them then. By combining them, we get a better rate, at least theoretically, than we would right now. So I think that was probably prudent advice. When you look at the expenditures by cost center, again, nothing really out of whack here. You do see, one of the more sizable ones in public services, again, special assessment districts. And then look at police, you see a considerable amount there. One of the big things that you're looking at in police, obviously, is we've negotiated a close of the defined benefit pension plan. We knew that was going to bring some additional costs on us. This budget is also predicated, including revenue and expenditures, on the board-approved millage question about the additional $500,000 for police. This budget has that built in there. So if that would include an additional $700,000 going on to the defined benefit pension plan if that millage passes. If it doesn't, we'll obviously have to amend the budget before you approve it. But this budget was built predicated on that millage going through. And then fire, obviously, because we're going to have some additional expenses moving forward in fire as we start to build the buildings. I do not have in this budget baked in the bond proceeds from The building, because we didn't have the dollar amounts put together at that time, that will have to be amended as we move forward.
Mr. Fike?
The elections number, it says it was amended budget for this year, 111,000, and that goes up to 510,000 5 times next year. I think I know the answer to this, but it's for the record, the state is mandating some of this. Dave, can you explain that a little bit, or Dennis, one of the two?
Well, yes, the changes you're seeing are predicated on changes in state statute. Obviously, elections and election security has been a hot topic for several years, and many of the changes that we're making here in the building were predicated on the necessities of that, and there are more demands that are being placed on clerks everywhere, including obviously the early voting, the 90s of early voting, and the movement from people that are more and more people obviously are voting by absentee ballot rather than on election day. So all of these changes are predicating changes in the budget.
And is there any way we can get some of that money back from the state, or is that just money costs we have to eat?
At this time, I mean, the money that, I don't want to call it that it's mandated, we're not getting funding for it, but we are in a way because it's just 9 days of early voting. The voters said this is what we want to have. So if you recall back, one of the things that is a statutory requirement of townships is that we election administration. And so walk up front and take a look at what's happened. What used to be spread out for the DPW, we had to really downsize them, inconvenience them for the next year and a half or so because we know they're going to be moving. But at the same time, we had to expand that clerk's department because we have to have election security. We had to turn that vault up there into the ability to hold these. When you just look at the sheer number of absentee ballots and the no reason absentee voting and the election security we have to have around those, let alone the election machinery and then the staff required, 9 days of early voting is a huge impact because we're paying those election workers. So are we going to get reimbursed for any of that? No.
Well, in furtherance of that point, I would just say as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, just for our election in November, for the millage question, we've already processed 4,601 ballots, absentee ballots. They were mailed out today, or mailed out within the last 24 to 48 hours. We've been the largest batch in 4,601, and there will be more coming. So that, we're talking about a considerable shift in the way that people vote and the costs associated thereof.
But the page that is up on the screen is like the page under summary, if anybody's looking for it, that where what Mr. Fike is pointing out is under the elections section where about a $400,000 increase. That is significant, but
I'm not casting aspersions, I'm just wondering.
No, but it's...
yeah, I mean, we have, one example is we have 3 places, where you can drop off your ballot, right?
And we're budgeting for, remember, we're budgeting for 4 elections, okay? You've got a presidential primary, you've got, you've got the May, potentially a May election, August and November. So you've got four different budget. And I believe, I'm trying to remember the exact figure that we were given in terms of the total number of days that, in terms of staffing days that we're going to have in 2024 that involves some aspect of election activity, and it was well over, it was like 300 of the days are covered in terms of the obligations of my office, in terms of the time and attention that we will be giving to one aspect of election or another in 2024. So it's a considerable, you're talking about a busy year.
Yeah.
That's the best answer I can give.
And I've been informed by our amazing deputy clerk that I misspoke. There is some reimbursement, but for the presidential primary only.
Got it.
That's right. For the post.
Okay.
So this is for folks who like visuals. This gives you an idea of the revenues coming in and where they come from. Obviously, property taxes are the #1 revenue generating source for us. combined with the state sources, and obviously state sources could be from a variety of things, but primarily you're talking about revenue sharing. And then a big chunk from this year is those bond proceeds, like I mentioned. You're seeing a big jump, but a lot of it has to do with the bond proceeds. When we do the amendment and have the other dollar amounts coming in for additional potential special assessments, as well as the fire department building, you could see that number again increase a little bit. Obviously, it balances, go ahead, Melissa, it balances with the expenditures. Not uncommon to most municipalities who have full-service police and fire departments. Almost 50% of our budget goes to public safety with those two entities. Again, not unexpected and not uncommon. 50% is pretty much a pretty standard number when you start to do some research with municipalities across the state. Then public services is bigger here, and again, public services also encompasses our special assessment districts as well. Special revenue funds budgets, in addition to your general fund budgets, you can take a look at these. Parks and Recreation, obviously $1.8 million. Your solid waste fund at $2 million is big. Building department fund, we treat the building department fund like it's an enterprise fund. It has to balance itself. We can't charge more for permits and inspections. Our revenue has to, basically, we have to be able to justify our revenue. So you'll see that we've done a good job with that. You're seeing the capital projects fund is big at $2.9 million. We've got some things to fund in there, which I think are critical. Especially, you're going to be hearing from the fire department. They have an estimate. I think I told you this. We're just trying to find some competing bids so that you're not just looking at one bid, but that new aerial is $2 million. And there's another truck coming behind that that's probably going to exceed $1 million as well. So it's tough to, as we sit here and do the plan and talk about the new fire station and another $6.3 million in hard costs to construct that building at the same time while we're buying $3 million worth of fire trucks to stick in the driveway of it. But that's the cost of delivering those services, and it's a really big, sobering number. So appropriations and transfers, we like to always point that out. In addition, post-employment benefits contribution in this proposed 2024 budget would be to put $419,000 above and beyond the pay as you go. That doesn't include, obviously, the $700,000 I discussed earlier about going directly to the MERS defined benefit pension plan if the millage passes. And then transfers out from the general fund to support other funds. We take over $500,000 in general fund support to Parks and Recreation to make that entity go. You saw their budget at $1.8 million. Some of that is with capital funds as well. We've got capital projects planned every year, and that comes from the millage that we have, goes in to support that. And then our campus projects fund, that number is the amount we pay for principal and interest on the bonds for your police department building. Putting $500,000 into capital projects fund to meet our needs. And then building inspection, again, it has to, we treat building inspection like it's a
Enterprise.
Yep. So next steps. You guys have the opportunity now to review all of your general fund and special revenue fund budgets. We have until the end of the year, like I said. We do have to notice the public when we want to hold our truth in taxation. So we'll do that as part of our overall budget process, but we just need to know you'll have to set public hearing dates as we move forward. We can pick any date. I think when I sent my preliminary message out, I was thinking that we would do it in maybe the second meeting in November. But we want to make sure that we have time to set those based upon the outcome of the election in November, where they're going to vote on the proposed police millage at the 1.5 mils. So maybe it goes to I think there's a third meeting in November, maybe that's the one, be the week after Thanksgiving. That would be more appropriate, or the first week in December. But I say that to let you know that you still have a lot of time to do any in-depth review that you want to do, to make any changes, to direct us to move in another direction, or just to get more information from each department. And with that, all of the departments are here and available for any particular questions that you might have at this time.
Mr. Feig?
I have a question about the investment income. And it's on page, I don't know. Where are we? It's under Revenue General, not the first page, but the second page. And it says, we must have lost money in 2021 and in 2022, 234. I would imagine with the parentheses, that means negative. But then we made money in 2023, almost $300,000. But then the projected for 2024 is only $150,000. Is that correct?
So you're looking at 658,500 is the forfeitures, and then below that 665,000
Yes.
investment income.
Did I say that accurately? We lost money for a couple of years. We made $250,000 last year, and then we're projected to make $150,000 next year from our investment income?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I mean, do we lose some money in investments? Yeah, in the COVID years, just like everybody else when the thing dropped.
Unrealized losses though, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we lost value. I mean, we were showing a negative return on our investments, right? But again, you look at 2023, where we're at, where we expect to be. And again, it's a guess. When you're looking at, what am I proposing for 2024? I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I probably wouldn't be working. That's always, quite frankly, an educated guess.
Right.
I don't know what we're going to make in 2024. I don't know what the future holds. Will the bottom drop out if something happened today, if the market goes? But that's always one of those things that with this part of the budget, it's trying to be somewhat conservative, so we're not trying to figure out what to do if we don't make that kind of money.
I got it.
I'd rather us be very conservative on that figure. And we, one thing to the budgeting acumen of Mr. Limata and finance is that we actually come out very closely in terms of projected revenue and expenditures each year. I forget what that percentage was, but it was single digits, I believe, in the low single digits in terms of, how far our expenditures and our, we've always been under budget, but we've about 4%. Yeah, about 4%.
Yeah, we do take a conservative approach to revenue because that revenue predicates everything. That's how many services we can deliver for the year. So we try to take a more conservative approach, and if we do better, hallelujah.
Right. Mr. Feig?
One more, forgive me.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I was looking through this.
Yeah.
Mail postage goes from 39,000.
Which department are we looking at?
General fund.
Okay.
Actually, 12,000. Oh, if you add these two together. It's
What's
over
the line number over?
101-192-851. It's under Fund 101 General Fund. This is from
192 is elections.
So the postage goes way up,
Yes.
Yep.
which we knew, right? So does it cost us for these absentee ballots because of the postage?
Well,
So are we saying to the voters, if you really want to save us a little money, you might want to just go and
well-
vote in person.
Well, the rationale, if I may, I mean, obviously, the argument, our argument among many was the fact that more and more people are simply voting absentee. It was a function of what happened during COVID, when we had an election that was almost entirely absentee, and then with the changes in the law. Obviously, part of the changes that are being made to implement since 2022, the proposal that was passed is, for example, the consolidation of precincts, which precinct locations and precincts, which was spoken to in the remarks from my office in the budget. But those items have been held up because they've not been given immediate effect in Lansing, because for various reasons that are Lansing specific. And so we have to budget in anticipation of maintaining the same number of precincts with the same number of employees through the 2024 election. So there's not a savings there that can be realized that can help offset some of the costs. So, but once that happens, of course, then we'll realize some savings in personnel there and other costs that way. But that all is dependent upon, honestly, events in Lansing with regard to when the bills actually go into effect and so on. So that's
The reason why the postage has gone up 50
is
grand
because
of the
people,
absentee ballots.
as I said, we went from 3,800 people voting absentee in 2016 to 13,500 in I believe in 2020. I mean, it was a significant, huge increase. And now, obviously, these people are on a permanent AV list that they will now receive ballots mailed to them routinely. What we're seeing is a shift from election day to an election period of an extended period of voting as a result of the frequent use or the greater frequency of absentee ballot, which of course the whole law governing that was changed when we adopted no reason AV. Remember that before the passage of that change, you had to have a reason to vote absentee. It was an exception to the rule. You actually had, and a lot of folks did. Anybody over 60 in that, veterans and such. But nevertheless, the whole emphasis of voting has shifted. It's pivoted to a mail-in process. To a greater degree. Whether or not it pivots back, whether or not there are changes in the law in the future is anybody's guess. We'll have to see.
I just wondered about the postage, and now
Yes.
it's because of that. I don't have anything else. Okay. Sorry to be the guy.
That's okay.
You know, that I saw.
Okay.
Everything looks good. From this one.
Okay, anybody, Mr. White?
I just have a question.
Sure.
for Chief Rainey, since he's here. We go from $5,000 to $65,000 for furniture. What? That's a.
Which
It's in the
budget?
police.
Police?
Yeah.
Well, we've got the chief here, and
787. I mean, it's a pretty big jump. What's that?
Great question. I don't remember.
what's the line number on the left, Mr. White?
101, 300, 787. We're typically, in the previous years, under $10,000, and it goes to 65,000.
Yeah, there's no reason, to my knowledge, we could put that in there unless, I'm missing it somewhere. Oh, was that? So that shouldn't go under office furniture, though?
Yeah, it's.
Okay, equipment.
Which number is it again? 10.
7 is the last.
So, through you, Mr. Supervisor, so through you to the chief. So we're not talking about furniture here, we're talking about cameras, and we had an item that we approved for improvements in.
We're gonna be talking about it in just a few
in audio-visual equipment and such. Do I remember that correctly, Mr. Limita?
Actually, no, it's gonna be on the agenda in the next item.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have something coming up.
Oh, okay, so this is not, okay, what is this?
In that line item, when you look at this and you see 787, that is, it says furniture, but it's furniture and equipment, anything under the threshold of the $10,000, that'd be capitalized items. So even though this is more than 10,000, but it's individuals are less than $10,000, so that's why it goes under 787. And that's what you're seeing. And again, if in the narrative, I think it's addressed in the narrative.
We're going to talk a little bit about the cameras in just a few, in the next
It's not really furnished.
agenda item.
Is that what we're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the narrative, they talk about the flock camera participation,
Okay, yeah.
Right.
and that talks about gain for the auto theft, Genesee Auto Investigative Network, and what that money, that $60,000 would do.
Yeah, and they would reimburse us for that. So we would actually pay that initial cost if we were to get into gain, which is the auto theft unit, and then we would be reimbursed.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes, Paul. And we're going to have an opportunity to look through this, but we have department heads here if anybody has
As well.
questions for them. And they'll be available, like Mr. Lehman has said, by email or phone as well.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
But we'll probably look at late November for scheduling the public hearing, right, Mr. Lehman?
Yeah, that's your,
I'd appreciate that. We want to wait till after the millage. We see where the outcome of that is for police. I know I have a meeting that I'm going to be absent for middle of November, so if we waited till the 28th of November for that public hearing, I think that would be good timing.
and then for us to move forward, any of the department heads are prepared to be here on any individual, meeting night. If you let us know in advance, we'll schedule. If there's certain items that you just want to review, or, have a discussion around, like I said, rather than have everybody get up and walk you through all their individual budgets, again, when the board reconvenes and they're looking at it for the first time with a new board, we'll go back to that same format where we want to walk through and let everybody know what's exactly going on and what's entailed in all the departments, but we feel that you guys at this point have a pretty strong feel. We didn't need to go through that, but they're all available, like I said, at any time. We just want to encourage you to reach out. There's no problem with calling, with send an email. It doesn't have to go through me. Go directly to the department heads, get your questions answered, because really this is your budget. We want you to feel comfortable when it gets approved at whatever you tell us, and we'll put the resolution. If you're thinking that it would be the third meeting in November, then we'll go ahead and do the resolution to set the dates, probably for that. But how much time frame do I need, David? First meeting in November gives me enough time?
Yeah, it gives you enough time.
Okay.
I think you need 20.
Is everybody comfortable with looking at the last meeting, November the 28th, for having a public hearing with the budget? Give us enough time to look over things in the month of November?
I'll still be out of town for Thanksgiving.
Will you?
We can push it back to the one after.
First meeting December, if that's better, but as long as we don't have any questions and then we end up delaying it, we'd.
Well, then you'll be holding special meetings right up to make sure we get it done so that we can still spend money when 1/1 rolls around.
Right. I see a few other government entities doing that, but we don't want to be in that boat.
We'll put the resolution to set the date together and have that for you. I guess we could really do it any time, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, and we appreciate all the department heads being here, or a good number of them anyways.
They loved it.
Okay.
C, 8C, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase of 17 license plate readers by Axon for $47,705.40 and authorize the township superintendent to execute all purchase orders and agreements.
Okay.
Chief Rennie?
So we have 17 marked patrol vehicles in our fleet. So within those 17 patrol vehicles, we have Axon Fleet 3 cameras. The cool thing about these Axon Fleet 3 cameras is it also comes equipped with a lens that's an automatic license plate reader. So it's got a 60-degree angle of view, meaning that whenever our officers are driving down a roadway, that is scanning about 5 lanes of traffic. Also, what's cool about that is we could hit any residential area that it's also reading license plates. We could go into any business district as well, as we're traveling down one aisleway, and it's reading all license plates on both sides. What that enables our officers to do is we're going to receive hits back, which if that vehicle's stolen, if it's got a wanted person associated with it, or anything that we put inside the system that has a criminal nexus to it. So we could have, like I said, wanted persons, wanted vehicles, missing persons as well. So also, we could end up going back 5 years because Axon holds all these pictures within 5 years. We're going to get a picture of the license plate, picture of the vehicle, and also any suspect that would be outside that vehicle if there was one at the time, traveling through those residential areas and a business. So very good, cool technology. Like I said, we already have it. We just need to activate the switch for the software to be activated. So Axon does have a yearly breakdown of what that would cost us. It's averaging right around $12,500.
So, you mentioned the database of or not database, but they hang on to the video or the pictures for 4 or 5 years. But where that might come into play, if I got it correct, is if we don't find out that something occurred in that particular area till a year later, we can say, hey, who was in that area on this particular date? Do we have a picture of going through that parking lot on this date or down this residential street on that date? And we can say, these cars were in this neighborhood at this time.
Right, so we would have to have a plate that we would have to input, so what's going to happen is the database is going to search for that particular plate. It's going to bring up the date, the time, and the location. So what's good about that is somebody could commit a crime 2 years from now, and now we get patterns that criminal has done in the past. Like I said, maybe most criminals, they're not utilizing their correct address through the Secretary of State. It's usually somewhere else. Now we're cruising that apartment complex, and we're consistently seeing a pattern that vehicle is inside that apartment complex. We know now where to look to divert our officers to actually make our township more secure and safe.
And there's multiple townships around us that already have this technology, from what I understand.
This year, we would be the first one in the county because this one's going to be on our vehicles. The other one is for flat cameras, which those ones are stationary, placed at a lot of intersections throughout the county.
So I thought Flint Township, but they just have the
Flint
flat
Township
cameras.
does not have a
Okay.
automatic license plate reader in their vehicles. This one here is specifically for the vehicles, and we would be the first one in Genesee County to have this technology.
Mr. Clerk Robertson?
So you're driving down the road, and this system reads the license plates of every car around you?
Yes,
Okay, and it's kicking back information to you while you're driving?
correct. It's going to hit on our mobile data computer, and it's also going to give us an alert, so the camera itself will end up beeping.
But I think some confusion amongst some people is it's not running their plate through lean or anything like this.
No, only a wanted vehicle. So if through the National Crime Information Center or NCIC, that would end up popping back. So a stolen vehicle is going to come back that it's wanted. Anything that we would input, so say if there was a domestic situation, the husband or the wife, they end up leaving the scene, they're able to provide us a plate number. We could go in there, manually create what they call a hot sheet. Now, anytime that our officer, that vehicle is in front of the officer, or maybe they're traveling through that residential area or business district, they see it, it's going to alert the officer.
So it's only going to alert us to vehicles we put in the system one way or the other, whether it's some national crime network, maybe it's a missing person, maybe it's, armed robbery or whatever, but we're sticking the plates in there. It's not running the plates through some kind of
Yes, sir, that's correct.
lean system is just what I want people to understand, that it's basically only going to detect those plates that they're in a database that we decide what's going into that database.
Yes, absolutely correct, yeah.
Mr. Fike?
So we already own the hardware. This 47,000 is for the software?
Yes, sir. That is for the software activation, for us to be able to utilize that LPR on
1
that
year?
camera. Nope, this is for throughout September 2026, which coincides with our Axon Fleet 3 contract that we currently have on our in-car cameras.
Is a motion in order, Mr. Supervisor?
Mr. White has a question.
Mr. Laddie, is this been approved is okay by the courts, because to me, in my position, this is terrifying. And it's, the info that's being stored. No, I'm a prosecutor, and I think there's some genuine civil liberties concerns about what info is being stored, and we're not setting ourselves up here for, especially if we're the first in the county, that makes me a little more reluctant, frankly.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking the same thing but I'm like, oh, this is a pretty handy tool as long as it's not accessing a database like lien or like state registrations or things like that. And I would think that and I know that, again, I've not, this has not been red flagged in the prosecution community, but I would think that we would be using this in a way that would just be not necessarily for investigations, not necessarily to build profiles on potential suspects, but we're doing it as sort of an emergency response. We're looking for people that are missing persons. We're looking for stolen vehicles. We're looking for not hot pursuit, but we're looking for crimes that are actually. You mentioned a domestic suspect or something. We're looking for active situations. We're not looking to create databases on people.
Correct, yeah.
So, and you're not aware of any issues that this has caused in other states regarding?
No, I have research policy, which if this is approved by the board, we would create policies specifically for the license plate readers. And keep in mind, I mean, this is all an open public view, a license plate. You know, we're not invading anybody's privacy by going on to, specifically their private property or behind their property looking for additional vehicles as well. So this is all out in the public. We've determined that, license plates are public information. So, and that's what it's capturing.
I'm sorry, our conversation right now is with our board. We had the public, I would encourage if members of the public that are here have questions or concerns, see us after the meeting if you could. I apologize, but
Well, so
Mr. Laddie?
When you begin to formulate those policies, will you include me and also Trustee White
Yes, sir, I can.
in your progress? Because we're just out of curiosity as lawyers.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there are multiple, I mean, I have done some research. There are municipalities using this around the country, though, obviously. I mean, Bowling
There are a
Green.
lot of agencies that utilize this technology.
Clerk Roberts?
Just a question. You mentioned we're the first in Genesee County, but is it in common usage in southeastern Michigan, for example?
That I'm not sure of, if it's in southeastern Michigan or
I
not.
mean by Wayne, Oakland, Macomb.
Yeah, so I have not looked at other agencies who utilize the Axon product. We are the only agency within Genesee County that is on the Axon product that even has that capability right now. So that's why we would be the first one if this is voted on today.
One comes to mind, I just did a Google search, and Bowling Green, for example, Ohio, which is just across the border, they actually got a grant to not only, I believe it was for flat cameras, so they're actually mounting them on intersections.
And there are numerous flat cameras around this county. And I believe Saginaw County is looking at those as well right now.
Yeah.
And through Mr. Supervisor, through you to the chief, the policy that you're talking about would come back before this board for adoption by this board? Or would it be adopted by the department?
Police actually adopt their own policy, right?
I would include Attorney Laddie and Mr. White in those conversations about the policy.
That was a question, not a statement I was asking. I wasn't sure precisely what the protocol was.
Those policies are typically adopted by the police department as their P&Ps. Every department has their own policy and procedures, and when they're doing something like this, it's unique. We don't adopt it as a policy for the township. It's department-wide P&P.
Okay. And following up on that, we are a credentialed agency, okay? One of the only one in Genesee County, I think, if I remember
Well,
correctly.
there's several that have been added
Okay, well,
since
that's
then.
great.
But yes, we are.
Within that definition, do they have like model policies for the usage of this type of software?
So where I have gone to research my policy so far on this particular subject is through the International Associations of Chiefs of Police, which is the IACP.
Okay.
Oh, and there are several policies out there that I have been reading.
Okay, but this subject is being dealt with within your professional organizations, and they're making recommendations with regard to what an ideal policy would be.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
City of Troy.
What's that?
City of Troy.
City of Troy has it? Yeah, and I imagine to continue your accreditation, your policy needs to be, in line, obviously, in practice.
Correct.
Yes, Ms. Hugo?
I just wanted to make a motion.
Okay, Ms. Hugo's making the motion. Well, we can still have discussion.
I just have, is this info foiable? Because there are people who go around, and I don't know if you get the First Amendment people here who film everyone coming in.
We've had a few of those.
And I just can see them having a field day with this sort of info, and I'm somewhat concerned about that being, disclosed.
Would the database, the database is just fed into the system, right? So it's not proprietary to us. It's a nationwide database of vehicles that have been flagged for whatever reason as bad guys.
Yes.
So for us getting a FOIA request for information from the database,
We're not, so, I don't mean to interrupt. We're not, so we're going to use this, we're going to use certain pieces of information to help us with specific problems, right? We're not, in other words, we want to, whatever we input into this system, we're going to get data back. But there's going to be a whole lot, most of the data is going to be essentially uncategorized, unreviewed. It'll be saved somewhere, but it'll be like Google Earth, right? I mean, it'll just be out with no governmental purpose for us, right? I mean, if you drove around with a camera in your car and it uploaded it to the cloud, there would just be data that we didn't necessarily use in the course of our business. We are going to probably create a database that's going to be specific to our uses. And let's say stolen vehicles, for example. You may gather a database for stolen vehicles. Depending if somebody FOIA'd that, we wouldn't necessarily, depending on where we were in the investigation, we might have to produce that information. But if it was like a pattern of crime solving or law enforcement deployment, there are exceptions to FOIA. But there are circumstances where we might have to disclose that information if it wasn't part of an active investigation that we have. And then the next phase of that, I can imagine, again, is just all the pieces of information in the ethosphere that we don't use as a part of of carrying out our duties.
Right, it would definitely have to have a criminal nexus to even be put into a hot sheet. So, and our policy and procedure would state that specifically. So you just can't run somebody's plate through this database.
but it's not just
For personal
our inputs
reasons.
in the data, right? Like you're going to get flagged. Do I understand this correctly? Somebody in Kalamazoo has a stolen car. That license plate's registered as a stolen car. You see it as you pull into the parking lot here, and it says, "Hey, that's a stolen plate." Right? I mean,
That's the
it's not
type of
input.
information that it's going to give to us.
So then I'm wondering, that database would be huge, right? So if we got a FOIA request, saying, "Well, I know you guys have this system. I'm FOIAing you. I want all the records in there that are showing plate numbers that belong to bad guys." We don't have that report. That would be one. I'm trying to think from a legality. We would have to say we can't provide you that information because no such report exists. It's just this humongous database.
That would-
it's not proprietary. We don't own it.
That would be through NCIC, actually.
So I mean, it's going to be it's an interesting topic, and we'll have to consider this stuff when we look at the policies.
Michigan State
Again,
Police
the policies
uses it.
that are police policies.
The state police uses it in their vehicles.
Well, I get this, but the fact that agencies are using it does not necessarily mean that it's been upheld as constitutional. There's a difference there.
I agree.
So, I mean,
We're going to use this my hope would be we'd use it in an effective way, but a conservative way. We do not want to use this we don't want to use this for offense. We want to use it for defense, for lack of a better term. And so I think it'll be, and this is fascinating stuff, and I look forward to seeing the policies that you guys are considering. And,
But the database will be probably one that is a conglomeration of, GAIN, which is a stolen car organization, putting plate numbers in there, Amber Alerts that maybe are statewide, federal situations where there's people they're looking for.
Wanted
Have
persons
wanted
that we know
persons.
is driving a specific vehicle.
I would think it'd be very few that we would be putting in that are Grand Blanc Township specific. But, you know, there might be crimes in the county that the sheriff's looking for certain people with warrants or whatever. And, you know, so I would guess that the database is going to be a conglomeration of a number of different entities. And so if somebody wants to FOIA that, they're going to be paying a fortune because that thing.
We would control what we put in on those specific ones too.
So, okay, so
So we
I
had,
think Ms. Hugo
we had
made
a
the
motion from Hugo.
right.
Do we have a second?
Somebody making that
Well,
motion?
I'll make the second if there's no,
Okay,
okay. On item 8B,
actually, no, it's.
8C, excuse me, 8C, excuse me. Aye. Trustee Hugo,
Yes.
trustee Fike,
Yes.
trustee White,
Yes.
treasurer Kilmer,
Yes?
myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett,
Yes,
6-0, motion passes.
thank you. Item D, the board will review the proposed agreement for issuing Class C liquor licenses from the township quota. Mr. Lemata?
So one of the things that this board gets to do, the state gives us a certain amount of liquor licenses that we get to have, and then we get to grant those licenses to encourage business within Grand Blanc Township. With the last census, our population went up. We actually have 9. I looked up on the Liquor Control Commission's states. We have 9 to give away, which is fantastic. One of the reluctance of giving these away has been that once we do that, this entity owns that liquor license and they can walk away with it and they can sell it a year later for $30,000 or $40,000, whatever's going on the market. It goes outside of Grand Blanc Township. We never see it again. So that's been a reluctance on the part of prior boards to give these things out unless we know specifically, you know, is there any way we could keep it here? Well, we do have a request for one right now. It's some folks who are looking at, and they're already in business. They own a couple of businesses. They're looking at creating a sit-down Korean barbecue restaurant with, you know, liquor and bar. So we've done our due diligence. The committee's met. We've looked at it, and the committee has agreed that we should move it forward and bring it to the full board, pass a resolution, send it off to the Liquor Control Commission, encouraging them to provide them with one of our quota licenses. But before we did that, I wanted to address the concern that we shared about what happens if we just give this license and it goes away. So I did a little research and I found a township who had a agreement that they issue that, and again, David went through and reviewed it and updated it for the township's purposes, but it kind of gives some requirements that you agree to this agreement, and then we'll pass the resolution and forward it on to the Liquor Control Commission saying, please consider these folks for one of our quota licenses. And what this agreement does is it says that if we do this for you, you agree to keep it within Grand Blanc Township. If you stop serving liquor at any point for 90 consecutive days without letting us know, except for, you know, fire, pandemic, acts of God, something that happens there, then you agree to return the license to the MLCC and request that the rights to the license be terminated and that it be placed or continued in escrow, you know, but instead it comes back to the township and we add it back to our license pool. Or if they decide to sell the license, that whoever they sell it to, the purchaser has to go with the same agreement that they agree that, yes, we're going to keep that license in Grand Blanc Township. And that would address our concerns with, hey, if we give these things away, somebody could get rid of it. So David rewrote what I had found in research, and a recommendation is that the board consider adopting this agreement. And then if you do, regardless of whether you adopt this or not, we'll bring it, the committee's recommendation about moving this next liquor license forward for these folks because it does encourage a sit-down restaurant, which is what we've heard from our residents over and over again. Give us a sit-down restaurant and one that has a liquor license available. So my recommendation is that we do this. David's looked at it. We don't see any legal reasons why we can't require the agreement as part of the process for the board's support in the resolution.
No, I agree with everything you said. The one thing that we'll have, and again, we're going to set up this agreement between ourselves and the proprietor. And so if they breach the agreement, we probably won't have remedies through liquor control at the state level. We'll just have a contract obligation for them. So I think that this is a good idea to try to conserve what few Class C licenses we have. Doesn't mean people can't bring Class Cs into Grand Blanc Township. They can buy them, they can transfer them, things like that. But this will help us preserve our quotas.
I like that idea, and that's been one of my reservations over the course of the last several years is making sure that, we don't diminish our quota and have them go elsewhere. I'll get to it. But have them go elsewhere in the county. One of the things, obviously, that our residents want are more restaurants, and this is one way to possibly garner more restaurants, is that if we have licenses available, we can attract them. And I know, the Tech Village area is one area that we've been looking at, and even, if we're looking at here in the north part of the township of how to attract some businesses, it could also be something to attract restaurants to this area. So I think it's a smart move, and I would definitely be in favor of it. Clerk Robertson?
Yeah, I like the idea of what we're trying to accomplish here with this policy and that. But just to be clear on the point, the state statute as it relates to liquor control, it allows us to place this condition on the granting of the license and limit their ability to sell it outside of Grand Blanc Township?
So we have it. We don't have the authority through liquor control to do that. We have the authority to set up whatever criteria we believe is reasonable for our community. And if we believe that this is a reasonable condition of approval, then it's my opinion that we can offer this agreement for them to voluntarily enter into or not. If they don't, then we'll have to decide whether or not this criteria is so important to us that we're going to recommend that it not be issued. But I believe that it's a pretty, I don't want to say aggressive, but it's a very thoughtful effort to try to keep our quotas in the township. And so again, if somebody breaches that agreement, it's going to be between us and the applicant. Liquor control is going to say, we're out of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other thoughts, concerns? So at this point,
I'll make a motion.
okay, we want a motion to basically go forward with this, drafting this agreement. What do we want to?
Yeah, to approve the proposed liquor license issuance agreement, and we'll update the liquor license policy that we have to include this as a step in the application process.
And then it's going to come back to us with the applicants for the board to approve it, or how does that?
Correct. The next thing you'll see from them is a recommendation from our committee that met that is recommending issuance of one of our quota licenses.
Okay.
Okay.
Clerk, or I'm sorry, Treasurer Gilmer?
From what I see, we have veto power, the power to review it as a board. The police have the opportunity to put in their 2 cents. There's a lot of review that goes on that.
Well, the police actually, the chief is part of the committee making the recommendation, actually. So when we bring the recommendation to the board, I don't know, in the next month or whatever, next few weeks, the committee is made up of several of us, including Mr. Limata, the chief,
Attorney Laddie.
myself. I think that's probably it, but we're making the recommendation that we move forward, but yes.
And just to be clear, this agreement will be a part of the package for all people asking for a quota license from us. This is not limited to the application coming up to you.
So the board would have veto power. The committee will recommend to the board, but it's going to be up to the board to decide whether or not we give, we recommend to the Liquor Control Commission that they get one of our licenses. That entity will still have to go through the whole process with the Liquor Control to be able to even, an entity could come to us, we could recommend them, and the Liquor Commission turned them down too, so.
And if you had somebody who doesn't want to sign the agreement, it just means that if then the committee would be like, well, they turned us down on signing the agreement as part of the process, do we still want to make the recommendation that we should issue one of the quota licenses? It doesn't stop them from buying a license and seeking a transfer from someone else.
Right. You had a question?
Yes. Item 8D was not intended to be an action item this evening, okay? The action doesn't have a resolution number, and it says here, we will review the proposed agreement for issuing Class C liquor licenses, but it isn't specific to the individual in question that brought the issue
It was
forward.
intended for you guys to approve this agreement as part of our,
So it doesn't have to be a resolution, but it's
Yeah.
approval of the
Okay,
agreement.
so what so we're approving, I want to get the wording right, because we don't do resolutions on the fly.
motion to approve the proposed liquor license issuance agreement and update the liquor license policy to reflect the new process.
Just a motion, not a resolution.
Okay. Boy, I wasn't able to write all that down as you were saying.
Right
It's in the packet. It's on
Okay. Right
the
there.
information sheet.
Okay.
Proposed agreement for
Hang on
issuing
just a
Class C
second
liquor
here.
licenses.
I'm looking here.
Suggested motion, page 37 of your packet, on the agenda memo.
Let's see. Okay, motion to approve or direct council to make any, wait. I'm reading from the agenda memo as well.
Suggested motion.
Suggested motion to approve the proposed liquor agreement and update liquor. Okay, very good. Yes, I see it now. Very good. Thank you very much. All right, so, with that in mind, item 8D, I guess we would need a motion then. I'll make the motion myself. How's that? You won me over.
Support.
A motion by Robertson, support by Bennett. All righty. Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
6-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Future agenda items, our strategic plan item, improving parks and recreation facilities is going to be next on our agenda. Any board members have any reports for their various committees?
No?
Okay. Just a few things. I understand they opened Grand Blanc Road this evening.
Oh, did they?
Traffic both directions going west of Dort Highway, so that's great. I'm sure everybody will be happy with that. We have our open house for our fire department for station number 2 on the 15th, correct? So that's a Sunday. What time is that? 1 o'clock, so come on out. We have our fitness court ribbon cutting on the 11th, which is a Tuesday at 10 a.m.
10th.
Oh, is it the 10th? Oh, I'm sorry, the 10th at 10 a.m., Tuesday, yep.
What's that?
Ribbon cutting for the fitness court.
Oh, got it.
Just to mention, we're going to have Rose Pest Solution attending one of our upcoming meetings here to give us a status report on how the program went this summer. I just want to state that this summer was absolutely horrible for the mosquito breeding. And what's to blame is all the rain. I think you'll find out from Rose that they put out more product than previous years, but when it rains continuously, we have mosquitoes hatching from eggs in people's lawns, and it's very hard to control that with an abatement program that's township-wide. I want to talk with them and have them present a little bit about what abatement means, and it's probably not the same as hiring somebody to come and do your personal property, but it's meant to lower the number of mosquitoes, not to eliminate them on property, but we're going to have a discussion on that coming up. The Genesee County Drain Commissioner's Office sent out a memo to the townships, and I forwarded that to all the board members. And that legislation that we had talked about as far as adding $2 onto everybody's monthly water bill is moving forward in the state legislature. It's meant to establish a statewide water assistance affordability program. From what I have understood from the Drain Commission, it would raise as much as $200 million a year statewide. Establishment of a statewide water assistance fund that would basically help water systems. There really isn't a clear definition, from what I understand, of where the money could be spent. Water shutoff, the legislation also provides water shutoff protections and prohibitions, decriminalizes the illegal water connections. It also clarifies tenant landlord water rights responsibilities. But they're encouraging us to have discussion with their legislators about that issue. So just be aware of it.
Clarification, the Drain Commissioner's Office opposes this legislation.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I would think
I'd
that
encourage
they
you to
would.
have discussion with.
And I'm glad for it.
And this, would have a negative effect on our water. I mean, our water system is a enterprise fund, so anything that's going to prevent us from being able to shut off or, one of the things, we do catch people using our water illegally, whether it's for construction projects or whoever.
We do, and our efforts are to try to calculate how much water they've stolen and just get reimbursed for that. And if we're prohibited from doing that, I don't know how we prevent water from just being.
Right. So we pay for every, gallon of water that comes out of our spigots throughout the township. So something to be concerned with. Also, we've got the police ball coming up too. I forget the date of it, Chief. But October 20th. All the board members, public are invited to that. It's going to be costumes optional for Halloween. So we'd encourage everybody to take a look at that. So before everybody leaves, we'll schedule a meeting for talking about the potential TIF district. Mr. White, Mr. Fike, if you could serve on that as well, and myself to talk about that issue. So we'll get together after this meeting to make sure we can do that. Let's see, what else here? I think that's it.
Is a motion to adjourn in order, Mr. Supervisor?
No, it's not yet.
Okay, that's why I asked, that's why I put it in question form.
36 years ago, I got married too.
Congratulations.
So, Mr. Laddie, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Limita?
Nope.
Okay.
Now is a motion in order, Mr. Supervisor.
It is.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Support by Mr. Fike.
Supported by adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Robertson and Fike. Fike.